I was pretty sure that one wasn't coming out. This thing, man, it threaded right in, it goes into the back of it's open to the water jacket in there, and it was in there. See, there's rust on the end of it, all kinds of stuff going on with it. So, shoot, man, I had to heat this thing and heat it, hammered on the end of it. I hammered on the end of it so much it mushroomed the end of it over. And this is a hard bolt. This is, I don't know what grade 5 or 8 this is, maybe one of those it is, but either way, I really did not want it to break off in there, so I worked on this thing probably about a week. And I'm just the kind of person, I can't move on from something when something's like that. I have to address it. I have to finish it and get it done. I can't go on to anything else on this thing. So now, hopefully, I can move forward. Jeez. But anyway. Okay then, so that's out. Now we'll get started on doing the rear main seal and all that. Doing the bottom end and then sealing the whole thing up. I can't wait. I don't know about you, but I sure can't. This train's going by the way. If you're wondering why the distributor's back in there, it's because I had this thing flipped over and I didn't want the cam gear to fall out of it. I don't know if it actually would, but I didn't want it to. Even if it's just thinking about it, I didn't want it to fall out because I don't know. I can put it back in, don't know if it's right or not. Because I didn't take a picture, but it's all right. All right, guys. Well, it has been a busy week work-wise, so I haven't had a lot of time to get out here and fool with this. And like I said, I've just been dealing with this thing every night, a little bit at a time here. So you probably could say, well, it'd be a lot easier if you had a torch. Well, probably would, but I don't have a torch. Maybe one day. So anyway, all right, let's move forward. Let's get on with it. Okay then, so here's what's going on next. Since we got past that fiasco with the water pump bolt, got it out, thankfully, we have to now change the rear main seal in this engine, and it's buried under here. It's under the rear main cap. This is the rear main cap right here. It's 2 bolts. But first thing is it has an oil pump that has to come off. This is the oil pump here to pick up and all that. And so I'm just going to wipe this down a little bit, get all the schmutz off of it, and then pull it off. And one thing to remember when you pull this off, this oil pump off, there may or may not be a gasket under it. I bought a gasket just in case there is. I'm not sure. I have to just see. So, but that thing has to come off with these 2 bolts first. And I'm not messing with the oil pump. The oil pump was working, and it had not sucked up any kind of stuff. I'm going to double check that, but it didn't look like it sucked up any kind of gunk in there. You know, I'm just of the opinion that a oil pump rarely wears out, so I don't see any reason to pull it off and add to the complexity. You know, I just kind of go with my instincts on this and just see what it looks like as I take it apart. So anyway, we got to do that now, so I'm going to go ahead and pull all that, and that's a rope type seal under there, should be. Now I see something sticking out right there. That's my technical term for it, sticking out. But there's a piece of this still left on here. I wish that hadn't been there. Get that off there. It's a piece of the gasket. But anyway, we'll kind of get all that cleaned up. So what we find in there. Okay, so this thing absolutely had a gasket on it. You see the remains of it right there. So good thing I bought one. I don't know if I can find one local. And that's the end of the oil pump drive shaft, and I'm not taking that out. There's no reason to. So I'm going to do a little bit of scraping and get some of the gasket stuff removed there, so this cap should come off fairly easy. I hope so. Okay, get this thing all cleaned up and got the lower seal in, and I've just put a little bit of sealer right there at the joining surface between the upper and lower seals. So hopefully that will do the trick. Prevent any kind of leaks going on. Not too much sealer, just a dab. So I've got the cap over here, and I have lightly greased the seal with some assembly lube, cleaned the bearing shell, and I did lightly oil the journal. And the crankshaft is back down where it should be. So we're going to put her together now. And this is it. Work or not work, this is what we're doing. So it's fun. Scary though, isn't it? Okay, it's another day and I'm home from the salt mine, and I got this engine finished up as far as the rear main seal and all that stuff goes. So we'll find out if I did this right or not, but it's gonna have to do it. So put all that on, back on, put the caps, torque them back down, 85, you saw that, 85 foot-pounds of torque, did it in stages. Put the well pump back on with a new gasket, don't forget your gasket, and torque those bolts to 35 foot-pounds of torque. And so what we're gonna have to move on to next is, before we can do anything else with the oil pan, is we're gonna have to replace this timing chain set, and then we're gonna have to install the front cover, which is over here, because that's kind of the order of operations. So I think I had a pretty busy day today, so I think I'm going to do something kind of low impact tonight, and I think this can maybe work on this. So this thing's in relatively good condition. It's the original, as far as I can tell. It's a part number for it. It's a late 60s part number. You have a casting date there of 68 is the year, and then all those are 12 little slices of pie right there, and whichever slices have a dot in them signify which months. You count the months up. So it looks like we've got 3 that do not have anything in them, so that would be sometime around September 68 casting, so that's about right. But this is not as bad condition as some I've seen. It's got a lot of pitting, but it's not real heavy, I don't think. I wouldn't consider it being real heavy. It's got some areas that are a little iffy. Right there, that's kind of rough. But the good news is that, yeah, we got a spot right here. The good news is not it's in good shape where it really needs to be, which is the sealing surface. A lot of times they start going away right here, and they pit. Well, the last ones I did one of these, it had that issue right around the water ports, and so you start to run into an issue with that because if you flip it over, this is where it's really critical. If you flip this thing over, then if it were pitted here, then you run the risk of it leaking water or coolant into the engine through the timing cover, because it's where your timing chain is, so you don't want that. So this thing is really, I mean, it has to be repaired. I mean, there's no question about that. You can see how pitted that is, but it's not I mean, this is pretty thick, so it's okay now. It can definitely be fixed. So we're going to do that. And I think, let me see. Oh, yeah. I think what we're going to use on this is, no. We're going to use this stuff. This is called JB Weld, and I don't know if many people have heard of this yet, but it seems to be a pretty good product from what I can tell to do this kind of stuff with. So we're going to we're going to do that. We're going to just give this thing a skim coat in various areas and kind of smooth out these pits and kind of fill them back in, because this thing cannot go any further. And this is mostly from, especially with it, you know, we can tell it probably hasn't leaked. Probably has not ever been off the engine, so it didn't leak. The gasket was still good. But this pitting is from just, you know, the coolant wasn't maintained. I guess it probably got acidic at some point. Maybe it started attacking the aluminum. I don't know. You guys that know more about coolant can do a better job explaining that. So anyway, that's what I'm gonna do. And one other thing I want to point out, you may have noticed that as I've went along this engine, made some video clips, that there's these letters stamped into the handrail of the engine. If you'll notice, there's a B there, there's a B there, there's a C there, another C there. There's a D kind of there. And then there's a C there. And another C. They weren't too spaced too well on this side. Then there's a B there. So we've got B's, C's, and a D. So what that is, that's very simple what that is. This is when the block was bored originally at Mound Road, whenever this engine was built at, back in 1968. They bored it, and they bored it on a machine, and so when the boring operation was finished and they measured the bores on it, the bores aren't always perfect as far as the diameter, so they stamped those letters into the engine block, so when the engine block went down the line and the next person who's responsible for fitting pistons in it, when it got to him or her, then they knew that this means how far oversized, probably in thousandths, or maybe not even a whole thousandths, I don't know, but anyway, it was probably thousandths. But anyway, it was there to show them that this bore was, B would be like just a little bit oversized, and then and C would maybe be a little bit more oversized and all that and so forth. So when they saw those letters, they knew what pistons to select to put in here. So it's kind of just sort of, you know, choosing from different pistons to give the correct piston to cylinder wall clearance that it really requires. So because your pistons are not a tight fit, because aluminum pistons expand when they get hot. And so if the pistons are too tight in the bores, then they're going to seize up in the bore. When the thing gets hot, it won't run. Same with your piston rings. So anyway, that's why that's like that. And if they were on the other side of the scale, if they were too loose, then it'd probably run okay. We never had that problem, but it would rattle when it was cold. It'd sound like a diesel, or at least partially, because it'd have piston rattle pretty badly. Like blah, 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 blah. So anyway, that's why that's there. So if you ever see those stamped numbers, stamped characters rather, in there, you know why that's there. So I'll just show you that. You may have seen that. Okay, I'm going to get on with the cover now. Okay, today we're dressing the front of the engine, and so I took the old timing chain off and all that stuff and discarded it, and cleaned up a little bit and chased the threads on some of these bolt holes, especially the ones that went into the water jackets. And I thought, you know what, this is going to be a great time to put in those freeze plugs. Got plenty of room, the cover's not in the way, so that's what I did. Just went ahead and did that. I used Forma gasket number 1, which is specifically designed for this. Have good old Made in USA brass freeze plugs. I was going to kid with you and say that I was using those Made in China steel ones. Nah, not doing that. So anyway, we're just putting this thing back together. I'm about to put what Chrysler calls the chain case cover on it, which is the timing cover. The gasket in there, of course. And I think I'm going to put all this together. One thing you need to always remember on these small boxes, you have two bolt holes that thread into water, which is this one and this one. And so normally you're always going to put sealer on those, but this engine has a lot of accessories on the front of it because it has air conditioning, power steering, and there's some things that are held in by those bolts that are not necessarily going to go on right now. So I'm just going to put them in without the sealer, and then when I get ready to just do final assembly, probably in the car, I'll make sure you put sealer on those. You don't want water migrating out of there. Of course, as hard as those things came out, I wouldn't suspect that would happen anyway. Be sure you put your oil slinger on, which goes in like that. Okay, well, something I got to clean up right there. A little goo. Okay, let me continue. Bring you back. Got the chain case cover on, and that's my so-called repair job on this cover. I have to smooth that down right there, I see. But it's basically just a preventive thing. It wasn't anything really. There were no perforations or anything like that. No voids that required filling to keep it from leaking water. So I think we're going to be all good here. I took my carbide scraper and just kind of knocked off some of the high spots on it, but it's all going to be hidden from view, so no problem. No problemo. All right, well, I think I'm going to do that. Get that nice and flush there, and then I'm going to put the water pump on. Show you what I've been using to seal things is this stuff. And I like this because I found some in an old-fashioned can, and it's got a brush on it, and that way it minimizes the possibility that the stuff stops up in the tube. I can't stand that. It's a waste of money. But also, this thing, I don't know why every one of these timing cover gaskets has this hole that is a hole to nowhere. The gasket sticks out. The other engine I had did this, and this one does it. So anyway, I got to quit yakking and get the rest of this back together so I can tighten the bolts all down. All right, man, I've been knocking it out with this thing. I've been not being able to get enough work done during the weekdays, so I'm trying to plug away at this thing and get it done as far as I can over the weekend. So doing pretty good. We've got the timing chain, timing cover on, water pump on, fuel pump on, and I flipped this thing over, and I've put in the 6 freeze plugs along the sides of the block, and I'll show you real quick. This is what I'm using to seal them. So I had to go in there and do some sanding and cleaning, and I had to get my Dremel out with a little stone on the end of it to kind of get those bores cleaned up for the freeze plugs. And I knew something like this was going to happen. I just didn't know when. It took longer this time, but I was flipping this engine around and I got my finger caught between, well, let's just put it, it was between two things where it shouldn't have been. That was my fault. Of course, I was mad about it, but it could have been pretty bad, actually. It looks worse than it is, but so anyway. So I think I'm going to take a break now, and I'm just looking at this. I think that is the end of a plug that's broken off in there, so I think I'm going to just leave that. I have new ones, but I don't believe we're going to use those. I don't like the looks of that. You know, it's just one of those things that you just put it back like it was and just move on. So I might actually get that former gasket back out on that. But anyway, I'm going to go eat, and then I'm going to come back out, and probably what I'll continue with is I'm going to put this adapter back on. I got the gaskets for it. It takes a, I don't know why I have two in here, but it looks like I do. Stuff never comes out, does it? Now, if I wanted this to stay in there, it'd just fall out. You know, people think that inanimate objects don't have an agenda, but I always say that they do. Oh, okay, this is something else. I don't know what that is. I don't think that's the one I need to use. Anyway, so we won't use it. We need this. And we need, let's put one more in there somewhere. Yeah, there it is. I lied. There it is. Fell out. Thank you. So anyway, these things, the way this works is, I'll pull that out. Well, I don't have to do that, but anyway, so you have three seals that seal these. Obviously, you have the perimeter gasket there, but then you have a thick cork gasket which goes in here like this, and that seals the inside of the adapter, which is it's over there. But you know, if you need to see that closer, I can show it to you at some point, or maybe not, because I won't be doing one of these again. But just take my word for it. When you put the thing together and put the bolt through it, you have this one in the center, and then this one on the outside goes underneath the bolt, the head of the bolt. So don't put any Permatex on this, because any kind of sealer, because you don't want that getting into your oil system at all. So don't do that. And like I said, this is the one that goes here like that. So anyway, that's why those things, it didn't really look like the original one was leaking, except that the seals on it were hard as a rock. But anyway, but the one, you know, that 318 that was in that red car I had, that Dart Sport, it had a leak there too. It had a couple leaks that were interesting. It had one there, and it had one on one of these gallery plugs back here. I think I mentioned that. So anyway, all right, guys. Well, nothing really fascinating. Just a lot of slogging through this. Just doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and do all that, and then hopefully get the oil pan put on here. And looks like I'm going to have another one of these potential fiascos, I guess you could call it. But I told you, I think I mentioned to you that those pipes there have to come out of that intake because they're no good. They're all kind of deteriorated and rotted, and you just don't want them to go there. So they have to come out, and I've been studying on how to get those out, because anything like that that's been exposed to water and heat and steel and age, they don't ever come right out. So I've already tried that a little bit to get those out, and I have an idea about how to do it. I don't think they're going to come out just twisting them out. Anyway, when I said that made me think of that Dirty Harry movie where he said, "You boys don't think we're just going to let you just walk right out of here, do you?" Well, that's the way those are. They're not going to just turn right out. They're going to fight to the end, to the death, no matter what it takes. It's like the other stuff. They have to just be cut out or whatever, piece by piece, till they're gone, but obliterated. So I think what I'm going to do is, if I can find the correct tool to use on it is you're probably going to have to cut them off mostly flush, maybe not all the way, and then we're going to have to split them somehow. We're going to have to split the pipe internally without cutting the threads up, and then that way it'll collapse. Hopefully when you try to twist it, it'll, you know, just give up. Anyway, I got to put the oil pan on, as I said, and that's one of these deals where you got you got 4 gaskets that have to go together, so that'll be fun. Anyway, I enjoy doing stuff like this, but I'm always a little bit paranoid and worried about stuff because I'm gonna have to run it and then see if I got any leaks and where they're at. So I hope I did this. You know, sometimes even when you take the greatest care, you still have a leak. Because these old engines, man, they are 1940s technology as far as sealing. So they got like cork gaskets everywhere, multi-piece gaskets. Back then they didn't have any of these silicone rubber one-piece seals that you can retrofit on there. These things they had sealer and they So anyway, all right, quit talking. Go in. I'm going to eat. I'll be back and I'll show you what I did when I get back. Okay, fascinating tidbit here. When you get ready to do the oil pan gaskets, you need to make sure that there's not a piece of the front cover gasket projecting upward. You see how that one's got a little tail on it? So I've already trimmed the other side. This is what you want to go for here. Make sure it's nice and flush because you got a one-piece gasket comes across into it ends here at that flat part, and then you have a set of one front and one rear rubber gasket that goes into the pan. It's part of the pan, attaches to it, and then you have to seal that little joint right there with some sealant. Make sure you do that. And then at the rear, if you're putting in one of these rubber replacement gaskets, which you will be because that's all there is anymore, you have to make sure you cut that little tail off on each side, because the cork gasket, if you use cork or any other gasket, doesn't matter, it has to fit into that corner at a 90-degree angle, so you can't have that little nub right there. It's got to go. So I've been working on breaking loose these pipe plugs. Correction, pipe nipples for the heater hose and the water pump bypass. I haven't got the water pump yet. I'm starting to work on that, but this one's broke loose. And see if you can tell me what you think the method was that I used on this. What do you think I had to do? That's what I've had to do on all of them. Okay, let's go out here and see what we got. Quite frankly, I don't remember. Oh, that didn't help us. Okay. I would say they're the same size. So let's just kind of take a reading here if I can. 64. It's a 5/8. Same deal. 2 5/8-inch heater hoses on this one. So this car should be the same as this one. So we'll look at that one. So evidently everything from 67 to 69 is the same. So, and then something changed in 70. And then they changed it back. Those are 2 5/8 hoses. So the one on the inside is going to the water pump on this one, and the one on the right side is going to the head. Huh, okay. Okay, that's educational. All right. So evidently what I need is I need 2 3/4 inch fittings and I need 2 short 5/8 fittings. All right, I can do that. Everything's nice and clean, ready to put on this intake. Got the surfaces all cleaned up, and those exhaust ports, crossover ports cleaned out, sucked out with a vacuum cleaner, and oiled the lifters just a little bit, and put some assembly lube on the cam. Even though this cam is original, it's not been out, it's already broken in. That just give it a fighting chance so it doesn't run dry. So yeah, we're ready to put the gaskets on and put the intake on. Get those towels out of the ports. Well, if this intake leaks, it won't be from a lack of preparation to avoid it. And if this intake ever has to come off anytime soon, it's probably going to take a stick of dynamite to get it off here. So now it's a go. So I'm going to drop this thing on here. You got to be careful. Try not to move it. This thing at least has got locating pegs on it. That's helpful. And there's people who say, don't use these end gaskets. Don't use those gaskets. Don't use these gaskets. Don't use. I'm not doing any of that. I'm using the factory style gaskets. That's what we're going with. So we're going to torque it down and I'm going inside. It's getting kind of cool. So, all right. Well, hopefully when I come back, this intake's on. And as promised, it's on. Torqued all the bolts to 35 foot-pounds of torque, starting from the center outward, working in a crisscross way. Boom, 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 or something like that. Anyway, so ran through those, and I'm going to come tomorrow, come back in here when I get in and run through them again. So just to make sure, because I don't think I can get to all these to torque them on the engine when it's run. I need to try. But anyway, so we're going to have valve covers left and the hard mount balancer. We need to go ahead and put those freeze plugs in the rear end of the head there. Maybe go ahead and change that oil sending unit. All that. And that's about it. We'll get this thing together and then we'll paint it and we'll bag it up and roll it over there, and we'll start on some engine accessories I think next, and then we'll clean up the transmission and reseal it. But in the meantime, my shop is a disaster, the floor is a disaster, the workbench is a disaster. So that usually means 2 things. It means I had a productive evening and that it's also time to go in. It's getting a little on the cool side now. So anyway, I'll probably go ahead and end this one about where we get the, I guess probably the valve covers put on. Oh yeah, one little thing here. I was looking at these fittings on this intake that I had to wrestle out of here. And this is another area where there's a lot of ambiguity on this, because what it is, there's a, if you Google a picture of a 273 or 318 or 360, there's a bypass hose that goes here to here from the intake to the water pump. And also there are 2 heater hose connections. There's one here and one here. I think this is the output to the heater quart, and then this is the return, I believe. I have to make sure of that. But anyway, these fittings, well, they weren't even here on this one. This new water pump didn't come with them because they're cheapskates. But these were bad, all mangled up. And I've been looking around for replacements. I wanted to go back for the correct ones. And the correct ones are these style. It's hard to see now. There's a remnants of a, well, maybe not. But anyway, if you look on that one, you notice there's a slot cut into the end of it. They're all four are supposed to have that. And these that I took out. Now this one, I'm not 100% sure this one might have been replaced at one point, because that doesn't look like a stock. You see these ridges on it, that looks like a replacement. So I think this has been replaced, even though it's in horrible condition. But this was the original. You see how thin that is now. And so I had to figure out exactly what size these are, because some things changed around with a heater hose. Chrysler kind of played follow the queen with these heater hose sizes. So come to find out, a 67 through a 69 uses two 5/8 inch heater hose lines, heater hoses, whatever. Anyway, you know, the lines that go from here to the heater cord, those things, that's two 5/8 inch. And then in 1970, for the 1970 model year, they changed them to one is a 1/2 inch and one's a 5/8. And then for about 1973 onwards, they changed back to both of them being a 5/8. So these didn't look anything. They're so corroded that this one didn't even. It's not anywhere near 5/8 anymore. It's more like a half. So that threw me off there for a little bit. But turned out what I got to have is what I have to have is I have to have two of these, which is a short 5/8 fitting, and then I have to have two of these, which are two 3/4 inch fittings. And the whole reason, I guess, that this water pump has this larger hole in it, you might have noticed that doesn't look like the same size. That's because it isn't. And you're supposed to use this goofy insert here and then thread in your proper size for the older cars. I guess this is because the newer engines used a larger hose here, like a an inch, 1 inch hose instead of a 3/4. Not sure of that. I'm still looking into that. So I've been looking for the proper fittings to go on this, and they're not that expensive. You know, it's not something you're going to have to break the bank to buy. So I want to go ahead and do that. You can buy them at the parts store, but they're Dorman and they're Chinese. Not saying that the new ones, the reproductions, aren't Chinese. They very well could be, but anyway, they look correct. So what I got to look for, though, the one kit that I found on this, and I know this is highly interesting stuff, but I've found one kit so far, had all four of them, the correct sizes, but they have one short one that I need, and then I have one that's about this tall right here. So I don't think I can use that, because you have an air conditioner, that thing there, that sits right over the top of this. So it may not interfere with it. I'll have to go back and look at some of my videos. But I don't really care for that. I don't know what the tall deal is. I think that's for one without air conditioning. So I'm going to look for the right kit that has the two short ones in it, or I'll have to buy them individually. They're cheaper if you buy all four of them. But this thing here, we've got to try to locate one that has this, I don't know, this may be a 13/16. I'm not real good at measuring threads, but that's what it looks like. I bet it is. It's not an inch. So I'm going to say that's a 13/16. So I'm going to need to find one that goes from 13/16 thread size to a 3/4 inch hose size. Anyway, no big deal. We'll get all that done and get this thing back together, because I want to paint it. I want to paint it and then wrap it up, because we got a while to go, because we got to do, like I said, all this other tedious stuff, and then we got to actually deal with the car itself. The car needs to be cleaned up and some stuff done to it. And I got to remember how all this goes, but I have all this bagged up, all this bracketry. That's later. Not going to worry about it right now. And you're probably going to be kind of, maybe a little bit surprised at how I paint this, not meaning the method, but what I paint and what I don't paint. Of course, I'm not going to paint brackets, but this thing basically, Mopar, I took this thing apart. You obviously saw that, so I know whatever bit of this engine has red on it and they just basically doused this thing with the valve covers on it and the water pump and all that, the bouncer, manifolds. This thing was, in other words, this engine was highly put together. If you notice, there's paint on these manifolds. Still is paint on it. I have to degrease that a little bit more, but this thing was totally put together. The only things that didn't have paint on it were like the sending units. They didn't have paint, but every single other thing on this thing had red paint. So this engine, spark plugs didn't, but this engine's going to have, it's going to be coated with red. I mean, the manifold's going to have red on them and all that. So it's going to be very, very red. So that's how you do it. You know, there's been, I also got to find out, this may be, I don't remember what goes, I don't think this held anything on, but I think this is where the negative battery cable goes. I've got to look into that, because there again, if you ever fool Mopars, there are things that change from year to year to year on these. You know, one year had the battery cable one place, one might have had a different, so it's interesting. But okay, I've had enough for today. I had a long work day, and doing this is tedious work. I don't like dropping intakes on, but this one went pretty well. I think we're sealed up pretty good. It squozed out some stuff there, so couldn't have been any worse than it was. It was terrible before. This thing was a pig. All right, well, maybe I'll see you tomorrow. Just putting some valve cover gaskets on. So, taking a interesting approach here. I'm just putting these are these cork gaskets, and I went back and forth. I read on, you know, cork and rubber and fiber and this, that, and the other. And so initially I was just going to spring for a set of those nice reusable gaskets, and I thought, no, that's out of the spirit of what we're doing here. So we're just going to put them back like they were. The ones that were on it were cork, and I'm pretty sure that they had never been changed on this, because the valve covers are nice and straight. They're not beat up or anything. Not like they've had the bolts cramped down on them. So anyway, so we're going to use these and see how they work out. If we have a leak, we have a leak. But I put a little bit of Permatex around the top against the valve cover, and then on this side, since I cleaned off this rail on each head, it's nice and dry now. I put just a thin film of grease, high temperature grease around here, so that it will not only maybe help it seal a little bit, but it will not stick to the head when I get ready to take it back off, if I have to. Hope I don't. But yeah, that's what we're doing here. These cork gaskets, they work by absorbing a little bit of oil, so they're going to swell up a little bit, I guess. So I was listening to this brainwash of a radio station. It's the only one this radio picks up, and of course they advertise all this stuff to do in Huntsville. And I kid you not, I just heard them advertise something in South Huntsville called the Rage Room. And all this place is you go in, you pay some sort of admission, and they have a room in there with a bunch of stuff that you can take a bat or some other object and beat the heck out of to get rid of your rage, I guess. So, you know, there again, you know, back in the day we never heard about people having rage. I think the more input into people's brains, the worse they work. So what if you don't have rage? What if you're just boring and just stay here all the time, except for work? What do? I guess I'll just stay in my engine assembly room here. I don't have to beat anything up. The only time I beat anything up is when it injures me. First, like my hand got injured, but I couldn't. That was the engine stand did that. I couldn't really beat that up. So, but if there's something, you know, that's kind of inanimate that can be a victim, then yeah, I guess I have beat some things up, thrown them, stuff like that, you know. But that's, you know, that's there was a reason for that. I don't have to just go in a room someplace, go to some place in a strip mall and just go in there and beat stuff up because I'm just naturally mad. I have to be provoked.